This conference is no longer being recorded.
Oh, thought it was being recorded.
You turned it off, John.
This conference will now be recorded.
Channel 18.
There we go. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is John Choi. I'm Chairman of the Finance Committee. This is a regular scheduled meeting at 6:30, March 4th, 2021. There's a notice I have to read from the Governor Baker here to be compliant. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may be gathered in one place. This meeting of the Harwich Finance Committee on Thursday, March 4th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Harwich website at www.harwich-ma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner on Channel 18 or by watching the simulcast at http://harwich18.dynds.org/cable/live-aspx?channel looks like 18D-2. No person in attendance of this meeting is public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to make sure the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technology means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Harwich's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after this meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order with a roll call vote. When I call your name, please signify as being present. Dan Torak.
Here.
Angela Lamonte.
Here.
Brian Weiner.
Here.
Mary Anderson.
Here.
Dale Kennedy.
Here.
And Tom Sherry.
Here.
And James was here earlier. I don't see him in here now, but if Mark, if you're present, say aye.
I am here.
Oh, okay. Well, everybody's here, 880. Introduction and welcome guests and public comment. The only guest so far on screen is Mary Anderson, and she'll give a presentation on the Cape Cod Technical Regional High School budget shortly. Welcome, Erin. And Carol Coppola is online, or she was earlier too. I guess I can't see everything.
You have Michael Lack from Harwich Conservation on. Joe Powers is on. Sandy McClarty is on. Their mics are off, but they're present.
Okay. Let me shut that off. There we go. Okay. Any public comment from people in the audience? If not, we can move on. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting of February 18th, 2021.
John, I have a comment about the minutes.
Oh, sure.
Under new business, the first bullet talks about you're reviewing the strategic plan with the committee. But then if you go down to the sixth bullet, it states that Dan Twork proposed drafting an outline of the roles and responsibilities of the Finance Committee. That doesn't seem to line up time-wise. Since in the first bullet, you're presenting the strategic plan, which is the document that defines the roles and responsibilities of the Finance Committees.
So Dan, how are you proposing to modify it? And I can modify the minutes record for you, no problem.
I think just delete bullet 6.
I don't have any problem with that. I suppose you want to put.
I think that was included in a previous version. That's it. That's just the only observation I had.
I have no objection to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So excuse me, folks. I just got to get back to, I had the wrong screen up there. Okay, book. There we go. Strategic plan. Minutes here. Okay. I'm not quite sure procedurally what we, Angela, any recommendations?
Strike the 6th bullet from the minutes under new business. Essentially, Dan's making the motion, and I would second that motion.
Okay. Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes with the exception of bullet number 6 on the minutes. Doing a roll call vote when I call your name. Dan Torak. Oops. I think you said aye there.
I was muted. Aye.
Yeah, aye. Sorry, Dan. Angelo.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Mary.
Aye.
Dale.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
And Tom.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. That passes 8-0.
Okay, so I'll revise that and share that back with the committee.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, moving on to the Cape Cod Tech fiscal 2022 operating budget. And introduce Erin Olcart from Tech School, who's their business manager at the school, and she'll present the budget. Mary, how would you like to go sheet by sheet? And I don't know how to turn the sheet. I turned it over to you to control.
I can just tell you to click or to toggle down when it's
Okay, great. And when we go to a page, do we want to ask questions that's right on the page at that time, or would it be better to save it to the end?
I would leave that up to the desire of the committee.
Okay. Why don't we'll ask questions as we're on that page. I think would probably be a better way to do it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, Erin, if you want to start your presentation, go right ahead.
Wonderful. As Mr. Chori announced, my name is Erin Orcutt. I am the business administrator for Cape Cod Tech. I'm going to my 14th year there, dealing with the fiscal matters of the district. So thank you for having me. Mr. Sanborn sends his regrets, but with 12 towns and often 2 presentations per town, he is actually live right now in Orleans. So you get the sidekick presentation. The next slide. I just want to introduce this budget, which has been formulated with the help of my finance committee and our superintendent, Mr. Sanborn. On our committee, it is chaired by Mr. Tullio, who's also the chair of our full committee, Mr. Bloomfield from Mashpee, Dr. Michaud from Yarmouth, Mr. Galazzi from Orleans, and Mr. Hebert from Barnstable. We began this budgetary process September of 2020. We went through 4 iterations of our proposed budget until we ultimately presented the budget that you're seeing before you to our full committee, which was approved locally on February 20. Next slide, please. This is obviously an enrollment snapshot of where we are currently today. The enrollment is captured as of October 1st. That's what they call the October 1 numbers. And for fiscal 22, that uses the October 1st, 2020 enrollment. And as you can see, we are up to 626 students, which is an increase of 10 students district-wide. But you will see Harwich, we are actually down to 51 students from your town, from 58 last year, which was an increase of 7 students.
If people can mute their mics if they're not talking, that'd be great.
Okay, next slide, please. This is just a pie chart depiction of where our students come from. It's obvious to see off the bat, Yarmouth and Barnstable have the majority of our students, sending over 50%, with the other 10 towns absorbing the rest. Harwich is a considerable sender to the school with 8.1% of the students. That's what's represented in those 51 students. Next slide, please. This is just a enrollment trend analysis. As you can see, town by town, Harwich is the lowest it's been since at least FY17 this year. We had a high of 77 students in FY18, but as you can see this year, we are down to 51 students coming from the town of Harwich. Next slide, please. So the budget that I'm presenting to you for your consideration is a $15,812,000 budget. This represents a 1.99% increase over our originally voted FY21 budget. This may be a little confusing, so I did want to explain that originally around this time last year, our district had voted a budget of a 2.76% increase over the previous year. Once COVID hit and the realization that our local towns would not have as much operating revenue, we decided to take another look at the budget to see what we could hold off on. And in June of 2020, our committee voted a revised budget, which reduced the increase down to 1.34%. This is important to note. We wanted to make every effort we could to hold assessments from FY20 to FY21 just to try to make things a little bit financially easier for our sending districts. So when I say it's a 1.99% increase, that is over the originally proposed budget for FY21. I will pause until the presentation comes back up.
You want to go to the agenda, Tom, you clicked on the far right slide. If you click on your middle tab, it'll give you the agenda back.
Oh, bear with me. Oh, I think
You have 3 tabs open. If you click on your middle tab, it's going to give you your agenda back.
Bear with me.
Would you like me to attempt to share my screen?
If you know how to do that, I almost think I got it right here. Hold on.
How's this? Okay.
Perfect.
Oh,
Okay.
you got it. Oh, okay, Mary. Erin, sorry, yes.
No worries.
Aaron, why don't you just go ahead and put it in slide view? Get rid of the rest. Go to your slide view, your presentation view.
Okay. I'm sorry. I have so many things open here. I show from beginning. All right.
There you go. Perfect. Now it's going to be perfect.
here we go. So where does the money come from? To fund our budget, approximately 17% of our budget is state aid, which comes in the form of regional transportation reimbursement and Chapter 70 reimbursement funds. Locally, we are able to contribute 2.9% of the funding locally. Although it is not much, that's typically made up of contributions from our Excess and Deficiency Fund, or our E&D fund, as well as locally generated revenue for interest income, facility rental. But as you may recognize, interest income is certainly not doing too well these times, nor is our facility rental. We were avid renters of our facility, but when COVID hit, we have ceased to do that. So unfortunately, some of our local funding has taken a hit, and we are trying to do as much as we can to offset that with excess and deficiency funds. Unfortunately, the remaining 80% of our budget is funded through our member town assessments. Those are the assessments that we are proposing be voted by your towns, which supplement 80% of our budget. This is just a quick.
Karen, could I ask people just to shut off their mics if they're not talking? There's feedback that's.
Okay. This is just a quick snapshot of what it looks like to fund our budget versus the revenue sources for the budget. As you can see, the blue line represents our operating budget. The green line would be the assessments from our member towns, red being state aid and purple being local contributions. It's easy to see that the assessments from our member towns are more than a majority of our budget revenue sources. This is just a quick historical representation of what our budget has been and the operating sources, the revenue sources behind it. It really has been very, very steady, as you can see. The one exception is in FY21 when we did revote our budget, and rather than devoting the 200 in excess and deficiency we originally had planned, we upped that contribution to 775,000 for this current operating year. The thought there again was we had excess revenue coming out of FY20 because of the pandemic, and we wanted to make sure that was a revenue offset for the next year's budget. So again, we made a very sizable contribution from our excess and deficiency fund for the FY21 budget, which we are trying to carry forward in FY22, but certainly cannot reach that same threshold without eliminating all the funds in that area. What is the money used for? Again, just a quick snapshot of what the budget looks like. As you can see, between salaries and benefits, whether it be teacher salary or support staff, administrative staff, that comprises over 79% of our operating budget, leaving very little for other things like supplies and plant operations. As you know, being a regional school district, we are responsible for the maintenance of our building. But luckily, we have a beautiful new building that we're hoping not to have to consume so much of the budget to be able to support. Again, what is the money used for? This is just a numerical depiction of what that is.
Erin?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question, please, relative to the pie chart, the preceding pie chart? So are you establishing on a brand new building, have you established some sort of a reserve? Because it is a beautiful brand new building. But if you begin to build a reserve, then you won't get caught where you're in a problem with repairs down the road. So has the department built a reserve strategy at all?
So the quick answer to that is yes. We do have a fund established called a capital stabilization fund. It is only funded about $140,000 right now because we would have to put that line item in the budget to increase that each year. We had originally used that to in the beginning stages of the building project, but also in our operating budget, we try to have upwards of $150,000 a year in building improvement funds. Those are just things to do the general upkeep of the building and the fields, as well as preventative maintenance. It is certainly something that we are working to put a better dollar figure to. We are in a transition year where we did not assume the building as of July 1st. It was actually more towards the end of September that we had occupancy. We have not gotten a full year's depiction of what the costs will be to support the building as far as utilities and improvement and mechanical things, as well as not really having a clear idea of where our maintenance contracts are going to end. So this will be a year of learning so that we can start planning more going forward into the future and have a better capital outlay plan.
So Aaron, my suggestion to the board and your finance committee would be that you establish a schedule of usable life for these key components of a brand new, beautiful building, so that you don't get caught in the place that so many communities and school districts are caught in, where they're trying to put out fires because they've never built the proper reserve fund. So I do think schedule of usable life and also establishing some strategy for reserve is going to serve you well going down the road.
Agreed, and thank you for that suggestion. That is certainly something that the superintendent and I plan to work towards this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you for letting me interrupt.
Getting back to this, again, just a numerical description of some cost areas of our budget. You'll see retirement. That is the Barnstable County Retirement Assessment, which is on almost 3% of our budget. When you add that to other things like retiree benefits, you can easily see how quickly over 8% of our budget is actually going to retiree benefits. And right now we are about 10% of our overall budget is dedicated to those plant operations. Hopefully we will be able to get a better idea in the next coming months as the fiscal year ends as to what those hard costs are going to be. Directing your attention to support services, 9.1% of our budget is dedicated to those are special needs services. We do have a substantial demographic of special needs students. Our students with special needs are 26.5% of our overall enrollment, which is much higher than the state average of about 18. That combined with economically disadvantaged students at about 46%, leaves us with an overall high needs population. Almost 63% of our students are either special ed or economically disadvantaged. So, that really does give you a snapshot of what our demographics are for our student enrollment.
Aaron, this is Dale Kennedy.
Yes.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. This is really well organized. It's very easy to read. I have a question on this page and the pie chart before. There's a line item called retiree benefits for $834,708, which is significantly larger than retirement of $449,201. Can you explain the difference between the two? What's included in both of those?
Absolutely. So retirement is exactly what I said. It is the pension obligation to the Barnstable County Retirement Association. Being a school district, all of our certified or licensed employees are in the Massachusetts Teachers Retirement Association, but our non-licensed, our support staff are in the Barnstable County Retirement. And as I'm sure you know, it is not a fully funded retirement association. So the 449 represents what our FY22 assessment will be to them. Retiree benefits is the district's cost share for retiree health insurance. Our district is a 65-35 split with both retirees and active employees. So the 634,708 is representative of the cost of the Medicare supplement plans that we offer to our retirees, and also something called a Section 18 penalty. Years ago, legislation was passed allowing us to move all retired over 65 eligible for Medicare from active plans to Medicare with a Medicare supplement. So a small portion of those retiree benefits are paying for that penalty that the legislation said was a burden of the district.
I'm just a little confused why the benefits are larger than the retirement benefit itself.
It really is that 834 is representative to our total population of retirees. I have to say we have a very large portion of retirees that are actually much larger than our current teaching staff. So the retirement benefits are exactly representative of 65% of the insurance costs for our retirees. Where the 449 comes in is that each year, depending on what the Barnstable County Retirement Association's overall funding target is, we are assessed a percentage of our membership. So for example, the FY22, the pension fund number that had to be gotten to was 71 million. Of that, Cape Cod Tech is 0.64%. So our assessment due for next year towards funding the Retirement Association for Barnstable County is $449,000. We expect this to continue until Barnstable County is fully funded, but I don't believe the target for that is until about 2038 or later. So this will be a fixed, not a fixed item. This is always a very sizable contribution of our budget.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Erin.
You're welcome. I will move on to the next slide if there's no other questions on this. So this is representative of our total operating assessments for our towns. As you can see, Harwich is $1,026,670. It is a decrease over last year's assessment. This is our excess and deficiency number, as I had mentioned. This is more or less the equivalent of free cash to a town. We are allowed to have 5% of our next year's budget in reserve for excess and deficiency. Our excess and deficiency was recently established at $475,313. It took a sizable hit when we devoted so much to offsetting this year's assessments. So we are actually funded 3.1% of our allowable 5. Any excess revenue or unspent expense lines are traditionally certified to go into this fund and then used again as a budgetary offset in the following year. As mentioned, our OPEB Trust Fund, we are actually part of the Plymouth County OPEB Trust, which is 115 multiple employer, that's actually up over 120 now. Irrevocable trust program established by Barnstable County for neighbors of the Plymouth County, Barnstable County, and Essex County are able to join this. We have an unfunded liability of over $21.5 million. The balance as of 12/31/20 in our OPEB reserve was $1.8 million. In the FY22 budget, we are contributing $200,000. We do have an established funding plan that I believe we are in the 3rd year of. Our plan is to get incrementally to $300,000 per budgetary cycle. So next year we will be proposing $250,000 and then $300,000 the year after, where we plan to follow our funding schedule of $300,000. We also plan to begin dedicating more to that reserve, but we cannot do so until that Barnstable County retirement assessment sunsets. So the goal of the district is to get this liability funded within the next 40 years. Capital debt. This is a quick depiction of our 20-year bond in FY19. We issued a $68 million bond at 3.32% for a 20-year fixed principal. We are going to be going into our third payment of that bond for a total overall capital payment of $6.2 million, of which Harwich in FY22 will own $509,639. So that together with your operating assessment calls for a total of $1.536309 for operating and debt assessments for the FY22 budget.
Erin, could I ask? Oh, sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question on that page? I noted that the operating Harwich is 16.4% of the total, and the debt were 4% of the total, which brings the total of those two to about 8%. I'm just curious why the different components have a different, there must be a different formula in there.
There certainly is. Debt is literally just a percentage of your enrollment. It is the total amount of what is due, and it's divided or multiplied by whatever ratio you are of the over enrollment. It is not simply the case for our operating assessment. Operating assessments do take into consideration enrollment, but essentially they start with something called a minimum contribution, and that is dictated by the Department of Revenue and the Department of Education that says what your town can minimally pay for. And so that number is really the foundation, the start of our budget. After that, taking into consideration supplemental, which is what we need above what's minimally required for you to contribute, transportation, and debt, and capital. So it is not as simple as dividing that number or prorating it based on your enrollment, because you first have that minimum dollar threshold that was set by the Department of Revenue. But then your supplemental, transportation, capital, those are more of a percentage basis. So
Great.
I'm not sure if that clarifies things for you.
It does, thank you.
That is the end of my presentation. I would love to entertain more questions, either on the school or the budget itself.
Thank you, Erin. If I just have one little question on this slide too. The total you have down there is $18,903,426. I mean, but your true budget is $15,812,000. What's the difference?
So what you're seeing is the total of operating assessments and debt assessments. If you're trying to get to that number, it's the 15 million less the local assessments of 12,647,853. Then you also have our state revenue and our local revenue that make that up. So this slide is really just assessments to member towns, not budget and capital.
Are two different numbers. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah. Yes, I do, Erin. What is the delta, if you will? Because last year, you guys were did a lot online, so you had no buses, you had no utilities, you had no 700 kids flushing toilets, you had a whole lot of stuff that was saved. Is there any savings in any of that?
So to go back, there still were busing payments. So our school effectively shut down, I believe it was after the school day of March 13th.
Yes, I remember.
After that, we were in a holding pattern till the end of the school year, not knowing if we were going to go back or not. We had legal obligations to our busing contractors. This was a very big thing statewide. We have legal contracts that say we had to pay, but of course, there were costs associated with our busing contract that couldn't be justified because the buses weren't on the road. But truth be told, there were still notes on those buses. There was still insurance on those buses. And there was also wages for the staff who were continued to pay rather than being put on furlough. And that was part of the Paycheck Protection Act with our vendor. So we had 90% of our busing contract still payable. We only did save about 10% in busing, and that was not unique to us. That being said, we still had utilities associated with the old building, although they were much less. But as you remember, that was also the time of our moving out of our existing building and trying to finish up construction on the new building. At the end of the year, we had $500,000 unspent in the budget. Essentially, by mass law, what happened was that 500 was declared to go to excess and deficiency. So it was certified, it was sent to excess and deficiency. And then once it was sent to excess and deficiency, it was then turned around and used as a budgetary offset for revenue. So as I had mentioned, we had about $500,000 left over. We took that, we added another $275,000, and the district saw relief in that new budget that we voted last year, or for this year, of a lesser assessment than they were going to have because we dedicated more of that excess and deficiency. So you did see savings. It was savings in the offset of a reduced budget and reduced assessments.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions of Aaron for tonight? Okay, hearing no other questions, then I'd like a motion to be made that we recommend the budget of $1,536,309. Is that the correct number? Harwich's assessment for the tech school's operating budget and capital. Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion, John.
Okay. Anyone want to second it?
I'll second.
Like to do a roll call vote on the budget. Mary?
Aye.
Dale?
Aye.
Dan?
Hey?
Dan?
Yes.
Yes, aye.
Oh, okay.
I lost you there for a second.
Angela?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And aye. Tech school budget passes 8-0. Thank you, Mary. Aaron. I keep calling you Mary. Sorry. Aaron, thank you for presenting to this. And a couple of us, as you know, went out and visited the school a few weeks back, and it's a beautiful school. And hopefully the rest of the town folks will be able to get in there.
Thank you very much. It's honestly a dream come true, a labor of love, and we're excited to see what the future has for it. Thank you, and thank you for having me tonight. And enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
And I hope Bob does as well in New Orleans.
Thank you, Mary.
You.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Okay. Next thing, I'd like to Mike Block. If you could open your mic, Michael.
Mike. Yes, John. Hi.
Hi. I apologize, Mike. I did send you a note to ask you to attend, but it was for the March 11th meeting.
No apology necessary, actually, because I understood that, and I wanted to attend your meeting this evening to get a sense of your agenda and what the agenda might look like on the 11th. So
Great.
I've been finding it very interesting.
Oh, great. Thank you, Mike. I saw your name and I said, geez, I hope I didn't send them the wrong date. But anyway, yeah.
You were right on it. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. We will be getting to CPC articles a little bit later on in the agenda. And it's, as the agenda says, it's just a discussion point to see who we'd like to come back. But you're more than welcome to stay on. Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, John.
The next presentation to be from our town administrator, Joe Powers. And Joe, do you know how to can you control the screen at your end before I get myself too much more in trouble at this end?
Well, there's a couple things you can do. I think you can make me an organizer, but I can make myself a presenter. That would help me with the slides that I have, but
yeah,
it really has to be an organizer.
Okay, yeah. I for some reason I thought I logged on as an organizer, but I didn't. If you could do the presenter, that'd be great, Joe.
And thank you to Channel 18 that just made me an organizer.
Oh, great. That's even better.
Promotion.
Oh, that, Jamie.
I need another tutorial in this, I guess, but.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Before we begin, first, I think we need to recognize our finance director. I'm sure you want to hear her input, her expertise, as well as mine. I will not insult our director by calling us the dynamic duo. She's the dynamic one. I'm just the paper pusher. And Mr. Chairman, I'm not, well, I shouldn't say I'm not. What I wanted to start out with is a discussion. I know you know that the joint meeting, the first of 4 joint meetings between this board, or this committee, I should say, and the Board of Selectmen has been posted. And that is the operating budget discussions. And for the committee members that were here a year ago, you know, we were coming up on our 1-year anniversary of having been able to have done the full Saturday event. As I remarked to Megan Eldridge, our ATA and former health director, we didn't know at the time that we had a potential super spreader event. But there we were 6 days before everything went south with COVID. And so the way that we're doing it this year now is the 4 dedicated meetings. So Mr. Chairman, I didn't know if you wanted to get into just an update and a discussion on that. And I didn't know what specifically you were all looking for this evening from me, other than I can certainly recapture some of the significant points of my presentation to the Board of Selectmen and the budget that you now have delivered by them, recognizing that you'll be doing a deeper dive over the next week and a half with those other operating department budget meetings.
Okay, yeah, I did get one agenda posting today from Patty, and I sent that out to the group for March 8th. I think there's 4 separate budgets going to be presented that night. I guess we could go through, if you have slides starting with, I guess, if you want to call it your recap sheet, and to see because 2 weeks ago we did do a presentation of the budget I had there, and that things haven't changed too much. A couple of the numbers have changed, but if you want to put that, I don't know what slides you do have there, Joe, but.
Sure, well, I made a reference to slides. Well, what you're looking at, there we go. What you should be looking at now, as you can see there, is my proposed budget, but to be more precise based on this presentation, what this represents is the proposed budget for fiscal year 2022, which the selectmen have now transmitted to you without amendment. And so, Mr. Chairman, I know that you participated and been on the various Board of Selectmen meetings and calls where we've gone over this. So I'm prepared to get into the materials that we have here. And again, would be also relying upon our finance director to help with the discussion. And Carol, if I'm correct, what you see here, the 12 pages, a portion of this will be on an ongoing reference during the departmental operating budget presentations over the next week and a half. And so, Mr. Chairman, if you want, we can certainly go through what I know your members recognize to be our sources and uses, description of the budget. And then, as you'll see, we have information on the revenue projections. We also have a deeper dive on local receipts. And I would highlight one of the changes from my presentation to the board, if memory serves correctly, on Monday, February 8th, to what you have now was just an update on estimated receipts for golf. And so we have that, and we have the warrant insert, if you will, the real basic snapshot of each of the operating budgets for the departments between salary and expenses. And so when you see that, you'll see the bottom line on the operating budget to be that 0.6%. And then, of course, we have some of our semi-fixed and fixed costs that impact upon the budget, one of which you just dispatched this evening with the Cape Tech budget. And then as we have, of course, a fully developed water department and a water system, and that is now combined with our burgeoning and soon to be built up over many years, our wastewater department budget. So, Mr. Chairman, again, I can go through the particulars on that. Carol and I stand ready to answer any questions on any topics you may have, recognizing again that with budget specifics, we'll be getting into that over the next week and a half.
Okay, Joe, yeah, because I don't, the most up-to-date budget I have is not the one you're showing here, right here. The one I had was the one that I got last from the town offices. It's
Right.
pretty close to this. I mean, this recap sheet here is what's on the agenda packet, so those numbers do match up. And the local receipt packet is in the packet. What I don't have is the breakdown by departments. That wasn't transmitted to me then. And so, but I guess we'll have to adjust. Yeah, because did you have on your recap sheet?
Is that back to page 1?
Page 1, yeah. What did you have for the tech school?
Carol, if you want to weigh in, I believe Carol had that information and updated. It looks that it is updated. And again, I'm driving that from, you'll notice that Carol's footer here has today's date and this afternoon. And
okay,
so
yes.
I defer to our finance director to just walk through this page to make sure I'm capturing the any other updates that were added.
Okay, yeah, because I do not have this sheet here, yeah. I got the one that was transmitted February 18th.
Concurrent with that overview, Joe, I'd love to understand what drives the debt service up so much this year.
Certainly, and I think those are two great questions and rely upon the expertise of our finance director.
So the only the packet that the town administrator is showing you here is what is going into the Board of Selectmen's packet for Monday evening, which includes the increase in golf revenue. In addition to that, it includes both of the school districts' budgets. So, the tech budget that you just approved, the lower dollar that I received last week is what is presented here. In addition to that, Monomoy Regional School District's budget has also decreased because of a health insurance. They were estimating health insurance premium increase at 5%. That actual number came in at 3% for Blue Cross and Harvard Pilgrim at 2%. So their budget reduced as well. This is the most updated information we had as of today.
Okay, that's something, yeah, we do not have. Okay, great.
As far as the debt budget is concerned, phase 2, contracts 1 and 2, as the committee may be aware, is funded from the State Revolving Loan Fund at a 0% interest rate. And the first year debt payment is coming due in FY22, which is why the debt has increased significantly.
So that's purely principal.
It's principal and interest. You pay, what becomes due is a principal and a half-year interest payment, and then 6 months later, a half-year interest payment.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, to your earlier statement, as Finance Director has said, this material was updated today. It will be in the board's packet on Monday, and certainly we'll make sure that your committee has this, because this is the document that we will rely upon generally as we go through those operating budgets.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, because like I said, the one that's on my packet is just the latest one I had. And I did check the selectmen's packet today, and I didn't see it then, so I guess it hasn't been posted yet.
Right, the packet for selectmen is always posted by close of business on Friday before.
Friday. Okay, so that's great. And
Another question of
I
Carol.
guess the good news is that the numbers are going down a bit, so that's the good news. So, if there's,
Can I ask a question of Carol, please?
go ahead, Brian.
Yes. Carol, I asked you once before when we were in another meeting, an earlier meeting, relative to the budget that you have in place on hotel and motel and meal revenue. And I asked you then if it was going to be budgeted off the actual. Are you still budgeting off the actuals realized in 2021?
For traditional and short-term rentals, we have budgeted off of the actuals for the last fiscal year that we had I guess I'll say a somewhat normal fiscal year, and those were about $700,000. We have refrained from budgeting short-term rentals, and the reason is because we're asking the Board of Selectmen maybe to set a policy or make a decision if those some of those funds are going to be set aside for another purpose, and which I believe that they're discussing,
Right.
under discussion right now.
Right.
Does anyone else have any more questions of Joe or Carol?
John, if I may, how close are we? I'm sorry. How close are we to the budget warrant timeline schedule where we should be at this point? So I'm looking at it, I think we're a little bit behind. We're going to catch up.
Sure, I'll take that, Mr. Chairman. So, Tom, thanks for that question. I will argue that we're on time. The point of the budget warrant timeline is to not only reflect the statutory requirements. Those are hard deadlines that cannot be missed. We haven't missed any of those, and we're on track to meet all of those. Many of the other dates in there are meant to just alert everybody to the various conversations and updates that have to happen. They're not regulated by charter, they're not regulated by bylaw, and they certainly aren't regulated by state law. So they all matter, but the ones that matter from a regulatory standpoint and from a DOR Attorney General standpoint would be our statutory requirements in the charter and the bylaws. And so we're meeting those. We're on track for those. And Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I should have also mentioned this at the outset. As I've said at the Selectmen's meeting, the board will be presented with a draft motion to delay town meeting from May 3rd until Saturday, May 8th. And so that extension of 5 days ensures that we're still online and in line with those regulatory deadlines. We're not changing the deadlines. We could, but we're keeping those the same. Bottom line is the Board of Selectmen will need to finalize the warrant for both town meeting and town election with recommendations that have been voted by the Finance Committee, as well as their recommendations. And as you know, we started last year capturing all of the roll call votes for both bodies. And so all of that needs to be in place to get to the printer at the last day of this month. The date that we're shooting for to do that for the board is March 22nd. That is a internal date. The date that has to be met is it needs to get to the printer in the first week of April to meet all those requirements to be in place for May 8th.
So when are we going to get the warrants?
If I may, John. Thank you, Joe, for that. The meeting that's going to be moved out to Saturday, is that going to be outside like it was last year?
Exactly. I think I'm pushing my luck with weather, but yes, it's going to be Saturday, May 8th at 10 a.m. The rain date, I want to make very clear, is not the next day. That's Mother's Day, I've learned. And so it will be the following Saturday. Yeah, absolutely. So there's two things I wanted to avoid. I wanted to avoid impacting upon Mother's Day itself, but also to make sure that if we do need to avail ourselves of the rain date, that we have not impacted upon the town election, which at present cannot be moved. There is no legislation that allows that to happen. And so the point being there is we may have some ballot questions. We certainly should have 2 debt exclusions, and it just needs to be, the town meeting needs to be dispatched and disposed of before town election. So I'm hopeful we'll get it done on the 8th. We have the 15th as a backup, and town meeting should be closed in the books by the time voters go on Tuesday, May 18th.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate the questions.
Could I ask a question, John?
Go ahead, Mary.
I don't know whether this is to Joe or Carol, but I'm curious when you think we'll get any kind of an answer on Monomoy's budget and the, what we want to call it, the appropriateness of the split.
Sure, and Carol, with all due respect, I'll take that one if you want to keep that mic closed. And Mary, it's the question of the day. And my response, I need to be very careful in how I present it because it's an ongoing discussion point between the Harwich Board of Selectmen, the Chatham Select Board, and the Regional School Committee. The best way I can answer that is the Board of Selectmen have a budget number from the school system, school committee. We know that the school committee is expected to vote a final budget number on March 11th, so 1 week from tonight. And so I'm expecting that the board will take up the discussion on the Monomoy budget at their meeting on the 15th. And so I would expect then that we have a final number from the school committee that represents the full assessment for both towns. And that at that point, I would be ready to make recommendations if the board so chooses. And I suspect that they will probably come to some conclusion, if not the 15th, certainly by the time we go to print the warrant. And the reason I say that is there's any number of things that could happen based on any number of actions the board could take. What I do know is because the 2 towns have to vote their assessments, Chatham has also already voted to delay their town meeting. Their town meeting has been moved from May until I believe the date is correct. It's Saturday, June 12th. And so we know that whatever action is going to have on the Monomoy school budget will first have occurred in Harwich, and that would either, depending upon a perspective, either put Chatham in the position of having to react or giving Chatham the opportunity to react.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Mary. Welcome aboard, by the way. Nice to see you on this committee.
Thanks.
So I have a question, John, please.
Go ahead, Brian. Yes.
And Carol, the first questions I ever asked when I got appointed to this committee were relative to the waste disposal revenue. To me, it continues to be one of those magnificent obsessions of mine. So you'll forgive me if I'm curious on the 21 versus 22 variance. Is that 21 actual against the 22 budget? Is that the number you're reflecting? Or is that, because it doesn't make sense to me if it's budget against budget. The numbers don't jive. Now I'm looking at an older version, I assume, but I'm showing, a variance of $106,000 it shows. And the difference primarily appears to be in commercial fees and regular disposal fees. But we also show revenues for recycled bottles, other recycling. And right now, I think we're doing single stream. I don't know how much is captured and able to drive revenue back to the town.
Would you like me to answer that for you?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay. So the only actual numbers you have in front of you are FY 18, 19, and 20. The FY 21 column would reflect the estimated revenues, and the FY 22 would also reflect the estimated revenues. So we did increase the line item that says regular fees by $100,000. There is a little room here to potentially increase estimated revenues a little more. They currently are managing that single stream and plan to do that, to continue that as it's being funded from CARES Act funds through the end of December. And then it'll be certainly the Board of Selectmen's decision of how they would like to move forward. So I guess perhaps there could be in that variance column, I can check that just to make sure that everything's being calculated properly, because I think what it actually is the FY20 versus the 22, the actual 20 versus the 22. So I think it's that column heading that probably needs to be updated.
That would make sense, of course, sure.
Yeah.
I see that.
Column heading's wrong.
The reason I ask really is that I think that we're not realizing the kind of revenue that we may have realized prior to the pandemic. And also, I think that there are certain aspects of revenue that are maybe more conservatively postured here, that in fact, people are at home more, they're not going out as much. Seems like you're getting an awful lot of commercial tipping going on. I just think that there's a potential there that number may be further off than it shows.
I've seen it on multiple lines, Brian, where I think it's the change is the versus the actual 2020, not versus the budget 2021.
Right, yes. Yeah, once Carol pointed out, I see that absolutely. Yeah. So I guess I want to be sure we're okay on revenue going forward in waste. I'm concerned that we may be more exposed.
Well, I think that the DPW director would come before you and tell you that his revenue is very strong, that he expects it to be.
Agree, but it's just been a peculiar year. I totally agree. Those guys do a great job. But it's been a peculiar year.
And depending on whether, whether an increase becomes before the Board of Selectmen for FY22 in fees, I didn't include that here, but I did have many conversations with the DPW director with regard to estimating his revenue.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
Other questions from the committee to Joe or to Carol? Joe, I have this. When are we going to get the warrants, Joe?
So I believe you mean, Mr. Chairman, specifically the warrant articles. Is that what you?
Warrant articles, yeah. We're supposed to get them last Friday, I thought.
So that was one of those internal deadlines that Mr. Sherry was aware of. That was a Joe deadline. Yeah. So what I've been endeavoring to do, and I will say that, knocking on wood, I'm almost there, is I am presenting a full warrant to the Board of Selectmen Monday evening. And when I say it's a full warrant, I mean it's the full scope of everything, with the exception of the tables in the budget items. In other words, you'll see that the language is there. The numbers haven't been placed yet because they're still being debated and voted. However, beyond that, every article that is expected to be there by the board will be there in full language and slightly different from last year, completely and fully vetted by legal before it goes out. So it will go to the board. I expect to have it in their packet tomorrow night. It will go before the board on Monday, the 8th. They will begin after the 8th, starting to confirm articles in the warrant. So I will continue to be in contact with you, just so you know that they may remove articles. And so if they remove articles, I will present that information to you if it's in the printed draft. What happened last week is, as you know, or this week, I should say, there were 5 articles that are in there that were presented to the board. Now, the first 2 are the zoning bylaws that are proposed. Those were sent to the planning board, to the selectmen. Selectmen have now dispatched that under statute to them within 14 days. And we don't expect that language to change, but we can't do anything until the planning board has their hearings on those. The other 3, as we mentioned earlier this evening, were related to wastewater funding sources as it relates to traditional lodging and short-term rental. There was discussion by the board on does the town wish to increase short-term and traditional lodging from 4% to 6%. And if so, where to earmark the 2% increase. That was voted down. That will not appear in the draft warrant that you'll get next week. The second item was presented by me for discussion was a community impact fee, a similar but separate category under the excise taxes, whereby professionally managed short-term rental properties could be assessed a higher tax. That did not go forward. So knowing that the board had to go into those for the first time, I opted not to release the full warrant pending that and pending legal review. Lastly, however, I do want to confirm that the board has directed me to continue on with a special, I'm going to get it wrong, it's off of memory, but special purpose stabilization fund for wastewater. And so what that is an opportunity for the selectmen, the finance committee, and then town meeting to discuss if we want to have a revenue location, if you will, a place for revenue to go rather than the general fund that is earmarked for wastewater infrastructure. When it's a special purpose stabilization, as with stabilizations, it's 2/3 going in and it's 2/3 vote going out. And so the board did not take up the offer of the additional taxes, but they did want the special fund to go forward. And there is discussion, as Carol mentioned earlier, on perhaps looking at a percentage of the existing 4% rooms excise that we get, because it's not, quote, earmarked, it goes to the general fund. It eventually gets certified within free cash, and it's used in that manner. They are now debating whether they want a percentage of the 4% to be siphoned off and put into that wastewater stabilization fund. So that's a significant policy discussion and that I think wasn't entirely conceived of until very recently. So those are the big things that they had to start last week. But the end of my long answer to your short question is the draft will be presented in full form to the board on March 8th, and it will be transmitted to Finance Committee, Capital, Community Preservation, Conservation, and other groups to then start their work on those articles.
So once it's presented to the selectmen, you'll present it to the committee, our committee, and we can start voting. My concern here, Joe, is to start voting on them, you know, because March 8th is Monday, and then you just said we have to get recommendations to you by the 22nd. You know, that doesn't leave a whole lot of time to hold meetings and stuff like that. So that's my a big concern of that. We are gonna, the next agenda item is the CPC articles to see if we can start voting on some of those on the 11th. I'm gonna post a meeting tomorrow for the 11th to bring in folks that night, and we're gonna vote hopefully that night for those articles, because they make up, what, about 14 articles or so in the budget?
Combination of capital and community is 13 articles, correct? Excuse me, no, 22. Sorry, 9 for capital, 13 for community preservation. But Mr. Chairman, the bottom line, as I said earlier to Member Sherry, is the date that we all have to keep in mind is the selectmen have to sign and close the warrant no later than March 31st to get it to print, to meet our obligations under the charter to get it to the voters. So March 22nd is a laudable goal of ours, but March 31st is a regulatory deadline.
Okay. So once you transmit the warrants to us, we can start voting on them then. Is that correct?
Sure. And what I would encourage you and your committee to look at are those articles that are fully vetted and are expected to remain. And that means there are no citizen petitions outside of the customary ones. And so those are easy items to get into. Again, the planning items, the 2 zoning bylaws for that, there's still another regulatory step, so I would caution you about getting into that too deeply. There are some articles that relate to general bylaws and charter amendments that I've authored that are fully vetted, and so those are things you could get into right away. And then beyond that, you know, when you meet on the 11th, you know, the next version of that draft that goes before the Board of Selectmen on the 15th will have many of the financial articles with the data completed. And so you'll be able to dispatch that early that week as well.
Okay, well, yeah, that's my concern. I do want to, if we spoke last week, I do want to get recommendations to you in a timely manner that voted on too. And we should get together to Joe. Take a look at that note I sent you on Tuesday for a meeting, okay? And so
yeah, absolutely. I noticed that, and Carol and I will certainly respond.
Okay, great, because I do want to get these things going. If anyone else has any other questions for Joe or Carol, please bring them up. And I guess according to what Joe, well, I guess we're all going to be on the meeting, or hopefully everyone on the committee on March 8th, because you're having a department head meeting also that night, right, Joe?
Technically, yes. What that is, remember, is March 8th and March 15th at the Selectmen's regular meetings. It was determined by Chairman Ballantyne and the board to have the smaller department budgets on the Selectmen's agenda. So we anticipate these to be joint meetings with you all. So that would be the 8th and the 15th. But beyond that, we'd be looking for your full participation on Friday, March 12th from 9 to noon, and Saturday, March 13th from 9 to noon. And those 2 3-hour sessions will be dedicated discussions, more robust discussions, because it's the bigger budgets. It's public works, public utilities, public safety, and many of the bigger budgets.
Right. I haven't seen, I guess only posting I saw was for the March 8th one so far.
Correct. That was the one we needed to get in for Monday. But what you'll see on your joint agendas is that after you get through the 4 agenda items on Monday that deal with operating budget, the 5th agenda item is the remainder of the schedule for both the Finance Committee and Selectmen to weigh in on how you want those budgets to appear before you on the 12th, 13th, and 15th. So that will be part of your discussion Monday night.
And I'm assuming that we have to have a quorum there for us to meet, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. That's why I sent that out in a note today to folks to make them aware of that. And I also sent them out a note on the, to mark their calendars for those other dates too that you mentioned, the 12th and the 13th. So,
great.
Okay. Well, good. Yeah, please give me a call. We can schedule some meeting time, Joe. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you to your members for the work you're about to do and have been doing.
Well, it's the time frame that worries me a little bit, Joe. But with your help and guidance, I know we can get through it. So I appreciate it. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else in the committee for Joe or Carol, and then we can move on to.
To belittle you, Joe, but thank you, Carol.
We can move on, and you're welcome to stay for the CPC articles too, Joe, if you like. I mean,
I was hoping to mute my microphone and kill my camera and sit in the background, ready if there's any questions.
Okay, great, because you are kind of, I guess, a co-sponsor on some of them that. Correct. That I feel that we won't be bringing in for further discussion, but
sure.
And we'll get into it. You can welcome to listen, and feel free to chime in at any time. I appreciate it.
Will do.
Okay. Okay, so we can move on now to agenda item number 3, which was discussion of the, my sheet here, discussion of the CPC articles that we'd like to bring in folks on the 11th for a little more discussion on. And let me see if I can share my screen again here. Okay. Oops. There. Hopefully, you
should zoom in on it, Scott.
Pardon?
You should zoom in on it. Magnify it. Make it larger.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
You can set it to full width of your screen.
How's that? A little bit better there?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. The purpose of this discussion here is to go through the articles here. Hopefully, folks have read them can understand them a little bit, and I can give you some background. I've attended most of the CPC meetings on these, so I'm pretty adept at what's involved in all these articles, and I can give you a little background on them now. And then Joe can also chime in too if I misspeak or can add a little bit more. As most folks know, CPC is a separate committee in town. Just to give a little background for people who may be listening or in the audience, it's a 3% tax that's levied against your property tax. It goes into a fund called the Community Preservation Committee, and that fund meets and solicits applications for 4 separate categories, if you want to call them that. And those categories are housing, affordable housing, recreation, historical preservation, and what's the third one? Open space, historical preservation, recreation, and open space articles. And then they meet and they decide if the projects are worthy, and they can fund their projects through this fund. So the first one on the list here is a project, and what I'm trying to do is just see which folks we should bring in on the 11th to give a much more depth background here. You can read in the explanation, HP1 is the cemetery administrator, Robin Kelly, is asking for $112,000 to do some gravestone repair, restoration. And from what my understanding, that this is a very, very old cemetery in town. There's actually Revolutionary soldiers buried in it, and it's for preservation of the gravestones and markers so they don't deteriorate and are lost forever. And I have seen some of the work Robin has done in the other town-owned cemeteries, and it's a wonderful endeavor. But the one little caveat in this project is that it's at the East Harwich Methodist Cemetery, and that's, for folks who don't know where it's at, it's over by the corner store in East Harwich. I think it's right on Church Street, appropriately named. It's on a hill like. It's owned, I believe, and that's what Joe, when he was mentioning that it's being vetted by town council, there seems to be some question, since it is privately owned by the church, can town funds be used for this endeavor? And if they are, should there be some restrictions put into the grant? So Robin can get into all that, and then Joe will give us the town's legal opinion whether or not they can access funds for this project. The next one, that one.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem.
Joe again, and sorry I couldn't get to my icons quicker to get back on.
Okay.
But just to be clear, what council has vetted so far is draft language for many of the articles. The question of legal opinions regarding these articles, I received a formal request for legal counsel's input today. So the legal has not yet gone into the specific questions of certain CPC articles and legalities. But that is underway, or will be underway shortly. We'll have the article language before we'll have the legal opinions, but we will have all of that together for everyone to make informed decisions.
Thank you, Joe. And then, and as we know, Joe, Robin can explain it a lot better too. So, and,
absolutely agree.
The next article is. It's been pulled. There hasn't so much been pulled, but there's no funding for this request. It was for some fencing in that same church cemetery. So that one's not being pulled. The third one for the cemetery folks, or Robin's group, is a Veterans Memorial Circle. This is at Evergreen Cemetery, and that's also, I guess, in East Harwich. And it's a Veterans Memorial Circle. She plans to have flagpoles there, lighting to honor the town's vets. I would I'm not going to ask for a vote on these, but if we can just get just a general thought on folks to bring Robin in to discuss these articles. If anyone objects this or has a different opinion, please let me know and we can move along. So I'll bring in Robin, and I've already notified a few of these folks, and Robin I have notified, and she's willing to come in and speak to us. The next one is the Brooks Academy. We're all familiar with Brooks Academy in the center of Harwich Center. They're looking for $1,150,000 for a foundation project at Brooks Academy. There's been a couple extensive reports done on this. Not to get too far into it, but this is what they're requesting. It has been approved by CPC, and the gentleman that will chair this committee is David Spitz, and he's offered to also come in on the 11th and give us a much more in-depth discussion on what's involved in this project. It's the largest of the CPC articles, and as I mentioned in my notes to you all, you can get much more detail on the CPC website on that link that I provided you, and you can see the reports there and some of their engineering diagrams and some backup to that. I suggest and recommend that you take a look at that also. It's a very good report, the big number, and my only question here is overall costs of the historical restoration of Brooks Academy, if we get some type of idea of what that cost is. And Dave is going to share those numbers. Joe, if you're still on, I know you're still there, but I got a quick question for you, Joe, on this. Joe, do you think it'd be worth it to have Griffin come in also and talk to us that night on this? Or Sean Libby?
You're talking specifically the envelope and foundational work for Brooks Academy?
Yeah, to give their recommendations.
Certainly, I'll say it this way, that staff stands ready to respond. I do need to be sensitive for both of those individuals that it's beyond their usual tour of duty, not that they would consider that, but I stand ready to work with David Spitz and to answer all the questions on behalf of the town, and will continue to be updated by staff. And then, if we need additional information. So yes, however, I'd like to lead the charge on that on behalf of staff.
Sure, you'd be more than welcome to, John. Just like I've mentioned, what I'm trying to get here is if we can get as best estimate of what the long-term desires of the Brooks Academy is and what the number, if we can, associate with those numbers.
Sure. So, Mr. Chairman, if I can build off of that, just to, because what you've said is what I'm looking to establish myself as town administrator. And so just if I could take a minute to just let you all know what sort of administrative change I'll be enacting. I've set a goal of 2 weeks after the conclusion of our annual town meeting this spring that Megan Eldridge, our assistant town administrator, and I will be reaching out to all of our department heads and all the chairs of committees and to begin discussion in this fiscal year for the next fiscal year and beyond to recalibrate really the capital outlay plan for the next 5 to 7 years and to get a stronger handle on what projects are being anticipated through CPC. As you said and as you've seen, I'm listed there as the primary applicant. And so the Board of Selectmen has indicated a desire really for me to rein in and make sure that there's a collaborative and coherent statement made on these projects that first start from the Board of Selectmen and administration. And so to that end, your last comment, Mr. Chairman, to get a sense of what Brooks Academy is looking for long-term, administration is looking for that as well. And I'm looking to do that through the Capital Outlay Committee, the Community Preservation Committee, and with direction of the Board of Selectmen. So if we're not able to get that deep in that discussion for this particular article request, we will be having that vetted very soon after. And that's really a significant change in operation, I think. So I just want to put everyone on notice that I'm going to be affecting that right after the conclusion of this fiscal year's town meeting.
Dan, could you mute your
Pardon?
Dan?
Yeah, just for the information of the committee, in case you don't know it, you can go on the Community Preservation Committee website, on the town website, and you can click on the site there, and you can actually review each of these applications with the supporting documentation. So that's just an FYI.
Yeah, and that documentation is very thorough. There's pictures and explanations. It's a great source of information.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, that was in a couple emails back that I sent. But thanks, yeah. It's important because I do want to, as best we can, get a big picture of the dollar amount here. And Dave Spitz is happy to provide that information. So he's coming in. Next one is Lower Cape Housing Institute. I don't see a reason really to bring these folks in this. You can read again the documentation, the application. This is for Community Housing Institute. It's for to help people with housing within the town. And I don't see a need to bring these folks in. The Veterans Home in Dennis is it's a brand new home that was built. I believe there's 5 or 6 apartments in it, and it's for vets that need some help to get back into society, so to speak. And it's a beautiful facility. I haven't been in it, but I drove by it, and just the question here, it's a little bit similar to the East Harwich Methodist Church. This is an out-of-town project, as you can see in Dennis. The town doesn't own the building or have any interest in it. And it just, if it's something that we can do from a legal standpoint, and as Joe mentioned, he's seeking legal counsel on a couple articles, and I think it's probably this one of these also. So, well, from what I do, no issue providing the amount that they requested, but just checking to see if we can do it. Something that the CPC does with their grant money, and it's quite common, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, is they do what they call a grant agreement. They write certain agreements within the grant, and so there might be some restrictions in that too. So I don't see a need to bring these folks in.
No, and John, from what I could gather, I think that one benefits veterans from all over the Cape, but they're not just veterans that are specific to Dennis.
You're absolutely right, Dale. There's no guarantee that any Harwich veterans could be in there, or no, you're right at all. So I'm sure that's one of the projects that's being vetted legally if we can do this. Part-time housing coordinator. This is something that's like an annual article. I don't see a need for this project, these folks to come in. And we can recap at the end if people have objections or recommendations. Hinckley's Pond, this is kind of a joint venture between the town and the Harwich Conservation Trust. This is for a piece of property that's over by the tech school, the beautiful bogs that everybody sees in the fall. It's called Jenkins Bogs. It's looking to joint venture, like I say, between the town and Harwich Trust. And I believe Harwich Trust would end up owning the land. But the total purchase price of this property is $720,000, of which $360,000 is being funded by the town. I've asked Mike Locke to come in to speak on this one, and another further one, or actually the next one down too. So Michael's coming in to speak to this one, and I'm sure Joe can give the town's opinion on this. But just to get a little more background on it for the folks in the audience here. And then since Mike was coming in, I asked him to speak to this project also. It's the Harwich Heritage Trail Project. This is on Bank Street Bogs. If people are familiar with that acreage, it's about 60 acres. I think it's one of the largest parcels, if not the largest parcel that the trust owns. They're looking to put in a nature trail there with boardwalks. And again, Michael can get into much more detail on the 11th on this. This ties in, I'm pretty sure Michael will get into that a little bit too, and Joe, with a project that was being funded by the town. It has been funded by the town of a restoration of the Bank Street bogs. It was $2 million that was funded by town meeting about 2 to 3 years ago to renovate those bogs to help with the sewer attenuation issue. So Michael's going to come in for that. Hydration station, this article's been pulled. Bike crossing lights, this is, you see them every year. They come before the town asking for lights. This is for, you know, the bike path to go, that goes over town roads with blinking lights that we see throughout the town. I don't see a need for these folks to come in. Old Colony Trail, this is for a boundary marking project. I don't see a need for them to come in. Brooks Park lighting. This is part of recreation. Eric Beebe, who's the recreation director, I've asked him to come in. There's 3 other articles on here, and he's going to come in and speak to us on all 3 articles. This one, just a little recap. This project was funded about 3 years ago, I believe, for lights at Brooks Park, for the tennis courts and pickleball courts and basketball courts there. And it needs $125,000 to complete that project. Eric can speak, and I'm sure Joe will give us an update of where they stand on the procurement of that. Sand Pond Restoration or Revitalization Project, Phase 2. Phase 1 at Sand Pond. Sand Pond, for folks that don't know it, it's that little swimming recreation area on not Queen Anne's Road, the Great Western Road. It's a very nice little pond for people to go swimming there. When I was talking to my wife about this project, she told me that she took swimming lessons there at 6 years old. So that's how long this I won't tell you how old she is now, but she's a lot more than 6 years old, I can tell you. And this is the project. It's this nice little swimming hole there. This is to a revitalization. Again, looking as Dan suggested on the CPC website, you can get the full details. It's basically cleaning up the beach area, adding some playground equipment, not a full-blown playground, but a few recreational playground pieces. And Eric can speak to you on that. There is some sentiment in town, I've heard, that this project, you know, it should be kept, not so much, there's some heavy consideration on this project, and I'll just leave it at that, is whether or not it should go through or not, but Eric can speak to us on that. Senior Memorial Field, this is replacement of some baseball fields. And this field, it's tough to find. I had a hard time finding it. If you know where White House Field is, there's a couple ball fields in back of White House Field. There's a dirt road there, and it's used by a lot of folks there. The senior softball league plays back there quite a bit, and Eric can speak more to that. And then the last one, which has been withdrawn, this is the White House Field. I'm happy to see that project not only has been withdrawn for requesting more money, but it's also moving full speed ahead. They're in the procurement process of purchasing the lights and the scoreboard for a baseball season, which we all hope, of course, it will start on, I think, around June 1st. So this project is, and it came in, I believe, hopefully under what they requested. So we'll see how that goes. So just to recap, there's 4 people coming in on the 11th to speak in more in depth about this is Robin in her articles, Dave Spitz on the Brooks Academy, Mike Locke on his 2 articles, and Eric Beebe on his 3 articles. And the intent is that we'll hear them speak. You would have hopefully read their applications on their CPC website, and we get a little more in-depth knowledge of what the projects make up. And then we can give our recommendations. I'd like to vote on them all that night, if possible, because as you've heard Joe speak, you've heard me speak, the time is short here. And we've got a lot of articles to vote, a lot of budgets to vote, and not a lot of time to vote, to spend here. So I would appreciate if folks can do the homework, read up on these, and be prepared for the 11th. And if any questions during the week, feel free to give me a call and I can help you fill in some blanks. Does anyone else have anyone else on this list that they'd like to bring in for a discussion? If not, we can move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the old business, our strategic plan. And
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to take this opportunity to say good evening to you all.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
And we'll see you Monday night at the first of the operating budget meetings.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
everybody.
you, Joe. Yeah, we'll see you Monday. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is old, under the old business title. This is a plan that Dan Torak put together with some input from some folks here. And if folks have hopefully have read it, and I'd like to, if anyone has any, make a motion. If someone could make a motion that we approve the strategic plan as written in your packet.
I'll make that motion, Joe.
Okay. Anyone want to second that? Any seconds, please?
I'll second it.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Okay, the motion's been made, has been seconded. Any discussion on the strategic plan?
Being new to it, I think it's really well written, and I like in particular the section with goals and some subsets under that. I think it's really quite good.
Well, thank you, Mary. It's and some of these goals, you know, the first goal was to get a strategic plan. So we did that. These other goals, I've had some preliminary discussions with Joe on and Mike McCaskill, primarily on the collecting of property taxes. Don't know how much we're actually going to be able to accomplish this season, because it just seems like this season just came upon us awful quick, and it's going awful quick. So, but like Joe says, after town meeting's over, he's going to reorganize and regroup, and that's where I think we can have a good chance to accomplish and put forward some of these goals. The good news, Mary, and for the rest of the folks in the group, as you all know, is the selectmen all are aware of every single one of these bullet items in the strategic plan here. This is not new. And once we get it on our website, it'll be published for the public can go out and see it. And if they have any questions, they can ask us. So, okay, if there's no more discussions, I'd like to do a roll call vote on these articles. I mean, on the strategic plan. All those in favor of the strategic plan, please signal by saying Dan. Well, I think he said aye.
Aye.
Sorry, I always go to you when you have your mic off. Angelo?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Tom? Is Tom still with us? Nope. Okay. Dale?
Aye.
Okay. And I'm an aye. That's 7-0. It passed. Strategic plan. Okay. Next thing is other business. Just as we've talked about, we've got a March 8th joint meeting with the selectmen. I hope folks can attend. A lot, I think, will be accomplished in that meeting. One, we'll be able to hear more budgets from the town's from the town's departments. We'll get the warrants. That's what I'm really want to get, these warrants, so we can get a good look at them and start voting them. I think Joe said there was 54 warrant articles. And as we all know, or if folks don't know, we have to weigh in an opinion on these. And then we also have a public hearing coming up on March 16th. I'll summarize these dates and get them out so people have them again. And that's a charter requirement there. The notice was published. I got that into the Chronicle, and that was published today. It's going to be published again next week, and that's March 16th. Joe will be a part of that meeting. It's presenting the town budget to the town as a whole, and if they have questions, they can ask us as a public hearing. And that's about all I have right there. Does anyone have any other questions of me or the board proceedings?
John, this is Angelo. Can I just ask you to do something?
Sure.
In the budget that you forwarded with the materials for this week, it showed a 4.3% increase in the taxes, which I think is being changed. I'd asked that they give you that number for Monday and every other time, because part of the thing we have to do is keep that number down from 4.3% taxes.
Mm-hmm.
The selectmen had a whole big conversation about charging a couple of people on taxes for 2%, and I thought they were going to get upset, and they don't seem to mind the 4.3 though. So I think it's got to be taken up.
I understand that, Angelo, as you know, and you know better than me I'll ever know, but that 4.3%, that's Prop 2.5, and it's Prop 2.5 and new growth projections.
Okay.
So it's, but you're right. You're absolutely right. It's still 4.3%.
Okay. That's what you have to pay more than the taxes you paid last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not only that, but then you get 3% of that of your tax rate for CPC. So it creeps in a little bit more. But I'll mention it to selectmen. And Monday night when we see you there, Angelo, you can raise the issue too. How's that?
I just think we need to know. I think everybody needs to know what that number is so that they can better make decisions on what they'll want to approve or not approve. Because if the number wasn't 4.3 but 0, I don't think you would have anything that you wouldn't disapprove, any of the warrant articles. But when it gets up like that, you start looking. That's all.
Yeah, it's a tough number, because it's the proposition 2.5 is baked into that number, and so every year it's going to go up 2.5% at least. So, But we can mention it to the selectmen and see what they say.
Well, I think the numbers will be changed as time goes by, and reduced.
Yeah, I agree. It's the only thing that can change though is that the selectmen have to have a different operating budget. So, any other questions? Okay, folks. Well, thank you very much.
I'd like to offer a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion that we adjourn.
All those in favor, I'll do a roll call vote. Dan,
Aye.
Angelo,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
Brian,
Me?
yeah,
Aye.
yeah. Dale,
Aye.
Mark, is he still with us, Mark? Okay, and I'm an aye too. So that's 7-0. Motion is adjourned. And Brian, I'll get out the agenda for next Thursday for you.
And I'll put that together for you.